I'm Shawn Levy, the director of Real Steel. Welcome to Ringside. This is our new second screen experience, and it's allowing you and me to take director commentary next level. There's thousands of stories behind every scene, behind every shot. And so in the same way that commentary allows me to share some of those stories, the second screen experience gives us a chance to look deeper, go deeper, and give you a more candid portrait of the process that went into making Real Steel. So you're sitting there, you're presumably holding a laptop or an iPad, and you're running the Real Steel second screen app. That being said, sit back, relax, go with me here, let's dig in. I have to say that it's interesting to me that this movie, which is, for me personally, the biggest departure thus far in my career, stylistically and tonally, it's also been the most gratifying. I was in post-production editing Date Night when DreamWorks called. I'm conveniently saying that as their logo appears. But they called, and it was Stacey Snider and Steven Spielberg, and they said, hey, we have something different for you, and it's a movie about robot boxing. And at first I was like, that's a crazy premise. And then I read the script and I saw that what the movie could really be was a humanist sports drama. A father-son story, a sports movie, one of those great, rousing, underdog gets a chance at redemption movies. And from my very first meeting with Steven and Stacey, I made clear that that was the movie I wanted to make. And through every step of the way, they've been kind of freakishly supportive of that. They always, studios, when they want you to do a movie, they tend to be supportive up front. And then, you know, they get their hands in it and occasionally they meddle, but I have to say this has been a charmed experience. This opening, I had heard this Alexi Murdoch song all my days. This will give away my ridiculously metrosexual exercise tendencies, but I was in a yoga class, and I was at the end of the class where you do this Shavasana thing, and you lie down and basically take a nap. But it's, you know, labeled as being spiritual. And they played this song, and I thought, oh my God, this is the song that's going to open my movie. And here it is opening my movie.
Hey, let's go. Is that ambush?
Yeah. Again, you know, for us, from the very beginning, for Tom Meyer, who was my production designer, and me, this idea of doing a movie that's set in the future, but that isn't kind of alienatingly so. For one thing, that had to do with the palette of the movie being not the conventional gunmetal gray desaturation that we often see in portrayals of the future, but rather a quite saturated palette that is, however, not kind of cotton candy-ish. It's unvarnished, it's realistic, but it's beautiful. Here we have the first of our robots. I could speak at length, and I'm sure in other featurettes on this DVD, I do speak at length about how we pulled this stuff off. It's fascinating, and rather than geek out on you here, I'll just say that, you know, for me, the process of learning how to do this, from the design of these robots through the motion capture, the IBC, the renders, it's a paradigm of visual effects that simply has not been used that much. And what it did force us to do, though, is we designed 19, 20 some odd robots 7 months before we ever shot this movie. Ambush was one of the first ones we designed, and he wears his battles on his steel. You can see this is not perfect outer space robots. These are gnarly, dented, scuffed up, messed up fighting machines. The bull's name, our kind of hero bull's name was Cujo, the aptly named Cujo. And, you know, we basically did anything we could to aggravate him, safely, of course, and humanely, of course. But this is where we first kind of get at this character trait of Charlie, that he talks a good game, but he always pushes it too far. As a fighter, he kept coming until he got tagged and knocked out. And now as a gambler, as a promoter, as a hustler, he's just that guy who pushes it one step too far. And here we see him paying the price for his bravado. We built Ambush. Some of these shots like this one there, that's a real robot. So this is something that is worth noting. In a day and age where almost everything can be done digitally, almost everything is done digitally. But we made this almost retro choice, this almost archaic choice, to build several of our robots for real. So right there, that's real ambush. And the movie is filled with intercutting between a shot like this that's real and a shot like this that's digital. And frankly, the greatest compliment that I can pay to our visual effects team, which was Digital Domain led by Eric Nash and Ron Ames, is that it's hard to tell, even for me, which shots are digital robot and which are actual practical robots.
This court is convened to address the custodial status of one Max Kin, age 11, mother Caroline.
Here we have the very easy to love Dakota Goyo, who is this 10-year-old kid that we found out of Toronto, got this role over, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other kids who auditioned around the world, and brought with him not only great acting skills, but this kind of that special something that makes you root for this kid. That thing that, Henry Thomas had in E.T., or Justin Henry had in Kramer versus Kramer, or Ricky Schroeder had in The Champ, where you root for this kid. You really, really root for him, and Dakota has that inherently.
You've been working with those robots for so long, you've become one.
That's one of many great lines in the screenplay written by John Gatins. And, Johnny Gatins is a guy that I've known for years because he had a cameo in my very first movie, the perhaps little-seen kid comedy Big Fat Liar. If you have kids, you've probably seen it because it's the movie where Paul Giamatti gets dyed blue. If not, probably haven't seen it. But John Gatins did a cameo in that movie and did this one ad-libbed line that ended up being in every single TV commercial.
They told me to pick up a little blue car. They didn't say anything about a little blue man.
Years later, when I came aboard Real Steel, it was basically a first draft by Gatins. And he and I just spent day after day, week after week, for about 5-6 months together, honing this script, honing the character, beefing out the mythology of robot boxing. And he did an amazing job. And frankly, where it really got fun is this scene in particular. I knew that I wanted this scene to be really declarative of who Charlie Kenton was. So in one of my earliest visits with Hugh, I'm sitting there in his living room in New York, and we just start ad-libbing how Charlie would con Uncle Marvin. What kind of fast one would he pull? And, all actors love a good aria, which is like an operatic solo. That's a term that I learned from Dustin Hoffman, who I worked on something once. We ended up making a movie, but he said, look, if you're an actor, you're flipping through those pages, you're looking for your aria, which is a nice, big, chunky monologue where you reveal character and frankly get to kind of chew it up a bit. This is Hugh's aria right here.
Feel for being such a terrible absentee dad, how I want to make good with Junior, a little fatherly bonding, whatnot. She'll buy it, you get to be the hero, and everybody wins.
And again, it's this scene where very early in the movie we see that this is a guy who is supremely confident, knows how to talk a good game, even though he's got maybe $12 to his name. So right here he's cutting the deal that allows him to buy a new robot, which turns out to be the robot we'll meet soon enough, Noisy Boy, who Charlie Kenton can only afford because he's on the black market. This is a great scene between Evangeline and Hugh, written like this, really well written by Gatins, but the chemistry between them is fantastic. And there's 2 lines coming up, one which she whispers, one which he whispers, which were not scripted. It comes at the tail end of this flirtation, and it just was kind of perfect for the sexual subtext, the kind of subtextual attraction between these characters.
Now I like money more.
They just have such a nice connection, and Evangeline, whose work I knew from Lost because I was a big fan, and I had to resist almost every day from calling her Freckles. I was a big fan to begin with, but she is just remarkable in this movie, and I think we're only beginning to see how great she can be.
I don't have it. I spent the money on a robot. It's gone. Okay? Gone.
You'll see coming up, one beautiful thing about Mauro is Mauro just loves beautiful shots. So here, there's 3 different masters to open this scene. Here's one that's a fantastic reveal of the space. But then it's like, no, let's shoot more. So there's one that's already great. Another one coming up, high angle, over the ring, craning towards them. And then you're going to see a third one when the boy comes in, and we track behind him. This set was magnificent, and Mauro just kept encouraging us all to shoot the hell out of it. So here's another shot. This shot here, it's got this kind of, you get the scale of this place. And again, the level of detail in the design. Look at the labels on this shipping crate. It's this futuristic robot shipping crate where literally these are handmade, hand-painted, or, you know, computer printed, but then hand-textured labels, customs labels from all over the world. We built Noisy Boy for real, and we built two versions. One is this kind of pre-accordion version. He's kind of squat, and he's compact to fit in the crate. And then once he steps out and extends to his full size, that too is a real robot. So they're bridged by a visual effect right here. That's a visual effect. And obviously this was a visual effect as well, just to marvel at the design. I think Noisy Boy is one of our most beautiful robots. And right now, boom, this is where this became a real robot. Obviously inspired by Japanese aesthetics, the Shogun helmet. One thing that's cool is you'll see these LEDs in Noisy Boy's fists. Right there, you can see it on the right of frame. Those are Japanese letters that spell out words like doom, pain, oblivion, the end. So something that, frankly, very few of us here in the American movie-going public will notice. But again, what was so cool about this was by building real robots, we got a reality to the performances that I'm telling you, you just don't get. You just don't get if you're asking an actor to play opposite a tennis ball on the end of a stick. So, you know, this is Evangeline actually reprogramming a real 8.5 foot tall Noisy Boy. And you know what people don't realize, I do now, and it's why I'm pointing it out, but like Noisy Boy was the result of, I want to, you know, probably 100 different creative people in the design, in the palette, in the engineering of how we going to build him, how we going to make him stand up, in every single detail of his design and manufacturing. You're asking for a collaboration of a huge army of creative people. And so you guys get to watch the movie and just enjoy Noisy Boy and not question his reality. But again, this started off as just, you know, a vague notion in someone's imagination, i.e. mine and the writers and the designers. But then just to get this whole team to bring it to life was really thrilling. One of the fun parts, you know, as you can imagine, is like when we were tasked with having to design 20 different robots, you know, eight of which are hero robots, it really forced such a wide open creativity to make each robot specific and individuated. This is a real shot. That's real Noisy Boy operating hydraulically. Again, intercutting between a shot like this, which is a digital robot, and a shot like this, which is a real robot. And I just love the kind of epicness of this threesome. Right here we get it again, but this is where we first really get into what will become a major motif in the movie, which is father-son machine. And this isn't yet the machine that we're going to care about, but it's a damn cool one. This song is an original song by Crystal Method, a band that I love. I brought them in, I showed them parts of the movie, they completely got it, they dug it, and they wrote 2 original pieces of music for me, one of which was here, the other of which is at the end of the movie. This sequence, this shot, by the way, was operated by Steven Spielberg. When we were shooting the virtual camera on the motion capture stage, which I couldn't possibly take the time to explain right now, Steven visited the set and he's like, hey, you mind if I operate in a shot or two? I'm like, no, Steven Spielberg, I don't want your shots in my movie. So, of course, he operated the shot. And you'll notice I still occasionally have to go by the 2 names, Steven Spielberg, because the day I stop being thrilled by that collaboration is the day I should retire. The truth is that the technological paradigm that we use to pull off this movie, and specifically the fights in this movie, merits more time than I want to take right now, because otherwise I'll fall way behind the movie. So check out this little featurette on how we pulled it off. Okay, I've been tasked with the ridiculous challenge of explaining motion capture, virtual camera, and simulcam V in 60 seconds. Here we go. Here's how we did the robot fight. We had real fighters in data-sensing jumpsuits. They would hit each other full-on in a boxing ring. We captured the data of their bodies and how they moved. Then that data got converted into robots. So for every boxer, they had an avatar that they were converted into on my little screen. Then I took a virtual camera, which is basically like going through a video game, and I was able to line up shots on those robot avatars in digital representations of each set, all inside a computer. With me so far, hopefully, I think we got very little time left. Then I go to Detroit. I'm shooting a whole movie. I'm in real fight arenas, lining up shots with real actors and an empty ring. But on my camera, in my screen, I can see in real time, and this is where it's called simulcam, simultaneously, the robotic action that we had motion captured 6 months earlier. So we're literally able to operate the camera to the movement that we mocap half a year earlier. Make sense? Hopefully, because I'm out of time. Was that clear? All right. You know, I've made a lot of movies, and I always try and create a team spirit. But there was something about this movie, there was something about the lack of cynicism with which we made this movie, that we all really wanted to make the kind of movie that we loved when we were young, the kind of get out of your seat, cheer for the underdog kind of movie. That was going to be visually cool, but would be tonally different than you expect a robot movie to be. You know, a tone that may be closer to WALL-E or Iron Giant than it is to, you know, Transformers or Terminator. I should comment on the score. This is a pretty elemental musical moment, but it's Danny Elfman. And, you know, it was interesting when I was trying to figure out who should compose this movie. There's some guys who I knew could do the kind of mellow guitar-based ambient stuff, like this scene. And there's other guys who can do the big, final fight, anthemic, rousing, rocky kind of, you know, scene, you know, accompaniment. But it's a very short list. In fact, it may be a list of one, the composers who can do both. And so I think it's worth taking note of the range of the score. You have a cue like that one that's just, you know, kind of Danielle Ladois styled electric guitar, like a bit of the Edge influence in it. You know, explosions in the sky, kind of ambient guitar-based music. And then later you have full-on, big-ass orchestral. This scene here, I feel like, should I ever transition to teaching, I would point out that this scene is a really good illustration of how to handle a staggeringly expositional scene. This scene is 100% exposition. Literally, Hugh Jackman right now, if I were to shut up, he's doing a monologue about the history of robot boxing and how it evolved. And so what we did is I filled it with props and business, which is to say when your actor has to give expositional information, you want him to be as busy as possible with physical activity to distract him and the audience from how informational the content is. Here, this is Real Adam, and this scene is a really, really good example. It's probably maybe one of the best examples of what was the benefit of building real robots. This scene shows you the benefit of building real robots. I want you to look at the performance of all three of them, but especially Dakota. This is what you get when you put a 10-year-old boy in front of a real 8-foot-tall robot for real. No visual effects here.
Oh, watch out. Stay back.
This was the actual first time Dakota saw Adam come to life, and it shows. This is our Adam builder and puppeteer, Jason Matthews from Legacy. He is operating Adam via remote control. And I wouldn't tell him what Dakota was going to do. I would say to Dakota, just do whatever you want to do. And I would go whisper to Jason, no matter what that kid does, you have Adam mirror him. And that's why you see that awe in the kid's face, because he didn't know what was going to happen. And that was a real robot actually shadowing his movements. And trust me, for those of us who were there, it's unbelievably cool when you see the real thing. The benefit, of course, is being able to capture that magical moment in the movie, rather than asking a 10-year-old actor to fake it, you know, with a tennis ball. Same thing here. This is Dakota actually hosing off a stunt version of Adam. It allows us to do a few of those kind of close-up robo-porn shots where we're completely fetishizing Adam and his metal and the mud dripping off him. But this is where Max Kenton falls in love. Right here. I could tell probably 50 stories about the ways in which Steven Spielberg, as my executive producer, had an impact on the movie. This scene here is a good example. There was always a scene of Adam following Max running down an alley in shadow mode. And Steven, after reading one of the drafts of the script, said, you know what, why don't we put things in Adam's path so that as he's shadowing Max, he's basically obliviously knocking very heavy things out of the way. Dumpsters, old refrigerators, trash cans. What you get out of it is not only the visual fun of it, but you're playing into the fantasy of what if you're a kid and you had your own robot, the power of that. And what better way to show the power of that than literally with these objects getting flung as Adam hits them. This scene was always kind of real clear to me from day one. I knew that I wanted him to tell Adam, can you understand me? Your secret's safe with me. And of course, in the very last scene of the movie, we call back that exact same line. This here, all real. Okay, so that's Dakota face to face with a real robot. And that's why this scene has such a lyricism to it, I think. The sound design of Adam, this idea that his hydraulics and servos would make a vaguely vocal sound. This was a suggestion by Craig Hennigan, my brilliant sound designer, and it gives Adam, we don't want Adam to talk, right? But we do want Adam to have personality. And so this idea of having his servos and machinery make that sound, that vaguely kind of whale or dolphin inspired sound, that was a great suggestion by Craig. You know, I'll share an anecdote because I think it's an interesting and possibly useful lesson to any aspiring filmmakers out there. This scene was written in a way where Adam was basically fighting on his own without a remote control. And that was how the script was for a year. And we were in the middle of shooting the movie when suddenly I realized, wait a second, we don't want to confirm that Adam is magical. He can't fight alone. He needs to have a remote, and the kid should have the remote. And so while I was shooting the movie, I was with Gatons rewriting this whole sequence so that we got two ideas that had not existed prior. One is the fact that Adam is remote controlled, and two is the fact that even though he's not operating Adam, Charlie Kenton sees everything that is about to happen in that ring, and it sets up the value of that character's boxing savvy and why it's so essential that he personally train Adam for the rest of the movie. But again, you know, it's something that I learned about midway through my career. In fact, I learned it from Ben Stiller on the first night at the museum, which is, you know, even when you think you're done and you can just make the movie, you got to keep looking, keep pushing, keep challenging, keep improving. And I'm grateful for that lesson because otherwise we would have shot this scene a completely different version, and I have no doubt we would have had to reshoot it because we would have had a robot in Adam who not only wins his first fight, but does it without anyone controlling him, which raises massive logic questions. So just a good reminder to always be diligent and go over and over and over and over your game plan to make sure there aren't any holes in it. This scene here is we're talking about because this is the first time that we have the infamous boy dancing with robot. And there's two things I'll mention about it. The first is that from the very beginning of pre-production, I told DreamWorks Music that my dream would be to have Timbaland write the song. I loved his stuff, I always have. And so we reached out to Timbaland. We literally brought the movie to Florida. We played it for him and his kid at his house. He really dug it, and he wrote this song. So that's number one, just the fact that I kind of can't believe that it worked out exactly the way I hoped. He just wrote this really banging track that works really well. But more broadly, the issue of this scene, I never knew whether it would work. Honestly, I always knew that Max dancing with Adam would either be completely lame and cheesy and get edited out of the movie and no one would ever see it, or it would be kind of irresistibly winning. And thank God it seems to be more the latter than the former as far as the way audiences have reacted. And part of it is the fact that Dakota, he's not some like dancey boy. The truth is Dakota had never danced before he made this movie. And this choreography is by Anne Fletcher, who is herself a really successful director in her own right. She did The Proposal and did the new Seth Rogen, Barbra Streisand movie. And so the choreography is kind of, it's cool, but it's not too choreographed. So we brought in some heavyweight help to get it done. So let's take a break right now and take a closer look. You know, this is maybe another slightly instructive moment. We were planning on shooting the scene in a hallway. And we're in the hallway when I glance outside and I'm like, wait a second. There's a beautiful sunset and river right outside. Forget the damn hallway. We're shooting there where it's pretty. So just the thing about directing I found is you always go in with a plan. You got to be prepared. You owe it to your crew and your actors to have a very solid game plan, because otherwise it's disrespectful of their time. So I always go in with the game plan, but the more I do it, the more I find you've got to stay loose enough to be open to new ideas, open to inspiration when it strikes.
Have fun. You gotta have fun. You understand me? We've come too far to get out there.
This scene coming up here, the scene where Hugh and Dakota leave the room, that's coming up momentarily, this was an interesting kind of watershed scene in this regard. The way the scene was written is we were going to do a moment where Adam sees himself in the mirror and we see Adam move. And it's a moment that is kind of magical, but it was also a moment that confirms that Adam has some kind of consciousness. And what we ended up deciding is that if we confirm that Adam is alive, it takes away a certain bit of the guessing, a certain bit of the maybe. And I think that the maybe of it is the magic of this robot. And so as you can see, the camera's always moving, but is Adam moving or is he not? You can't really tell, and that's the idea.
Fight smart. Be patient. Pray.
Improvised line.
Seriously, pray.
Again, I really believe in creating a loose enough environment on your set that your actors, I mean, that's really a function of coming from comedy. Obviously, I've made a lot of comedies, and when you're working in comedy, you absolutely always leave room for ad-libs and improvisation. And I brought the same approach to this first action drama of mine. If an actor's got an idea, I want it. The movie alternates, I'm sure you've noticed, between sequences with a tremendous density of sound and then scenes that are conspicuously silent. This is another example. After that big, loud fight, we have a scene with nothing but an electric guitar score and silence as Charlie makes his decision. Because I think we've all sat in action movies and I guess various genres of movies where you get sound fatigue, where it's such a barrage of sound and loudness that if you don't give the audience those variations, they end up tuning it out because it just becomes an overwhelming wall of loudness. There's a moment coming up outside that I'm going to just lead into because I think it's really interesting. There is a line coming up that has an interesting story behind it. We were in pre-production and we were experimenting with the size of Adam and how tall should Adam be relative to the child. And we shot this test. Basically, it looked like a video game, and it was like a little kind of digital Adam next to this young woman named Kelly. And it was just kind of experimenting with the size of how much taller than the kid should the robot be. But what it showed us was the child and the robot in the same frame. And Stacy Snyder, who's the chairman of DreamWorks Studios, came by to visit, and I showed her this test. And again, it was a woman and a digital-looking fake robot. And Stacy looks at it, And she turns to me and she goes, he just wants someone to fight for him. And she realized in that moment that the whole movie
What do you want from me?
I want you to fight for me.
is about that. The whole movie is about this kid's yearning for someone to fight for him. And when Stacy landed on it, I knew that that line had to go right into the heart of the movie, which is this scene where they part ways. And the kid actually says, I want you to fight for me. It's all I ever wanted. And it was just interesting how this little digital scaling test led to the studio executives seeing something and articulating, I think, so wonderfully the thematic heart of the movie. I love how you can see into the insides of our robots. I wanted always, one way that we were very, I think, distinct in wanting to carve out a different space than Transformers is that they aren't from outer space. These are human-designed, human-built machines, and I always wanted to get glimpses and peekaboos into how they work, which is why almost every robot you're able to see up inside between his plates, so that not only does it feel three-dimensional and real, but it also feels, kind of like we're showing how it works. Unintentionally, I realize now that Zeus's signature move right here is exactly the same as a move that a character did in a movie I directed called Night Museum 2, where we have the Thinker sculpture in a much quoted little moment go boom, boom, firepower. He does the exact same silly move with his biceps. Many people have seen the movie and said that they did not expect, they weren't sure how you could do a movie about robots boxing that would actually make us feel something. And so much of this movie, both the challenge and the gratification of the movie, is in figuring out how to make a movie about machines that is even more so about its people. And as a result, it has actual, poignance and hopefully, emotionality. And I think it's a combination of many, many aspects, but certainly the heart of it is in this relationship between father and son. And when I first came on board, this scene and all of round 5 didn't exist in this form. Adam eventually went the distance, but when I first read the script, I said, I think I know what this thing needs. I think that round 5, the kid needs to put Adam in shadow mode, and that it's Charlie Kenton's opportunity to return to grace. And it wasn't in the script at that point, but it's exactly what I pitched to the studio in my very first meeting. And I pitched a moment that's coming up where suddenly we see that this boy who reveres this robot shifts his reverence to his father, who he sees returning to grace. And round 5, for that reason, is particularly close to my heart because it really didn't exist. And I think that most movie viewers don't understand kind of the nature of the development process and how intimately we directors work with our writers and how it really becomes a collaboration of ideas. But I don't know that I've ever had one that kind of worked to the extent that this one feels like it works. Because, of course, this is where it all comes together. The shadow mode not only has a pragmatic function, but a thematic function as well. Because this is where Charlie gets to take all that history as a boxer, all that frustration of being rendered obsolete as a human fighter, and he gets to bring it to bear in round 5.
Adam is backed up against the ropes again. This little bot is dug deep here tonight and shown something damn near heart.
That line there, this little bot has dug deep here tonight and shown something damn near heart. That's a line that I had improvised literally a year and a half ago when we were on the motion capture stage. I was doing some temporary audio for the announcers, and Steven happened to have heard it, and he said, oh, you got to keep that line. You got to keep that line. And so it survived a year and a half, and I was able to put it in the mouth of our announcers. We had reshot something here. Initially, Max's answer to that line was, I want a rematch. And we felt that it made him a little too cocky. So we reshot it. and that's my hand holding the microphone, and we just have him say, "Sounds pretty good to me." And just look at this performance moment for Hugh Jackman when he hugs his kid. The reality is, this movie, you know what? It's like, this movie is unabashedly what it is, which is a big-hearted sports kind of movie. And I knew that it wouldn't be for everyone, but I also knew that to the extent that I'm confident that we go to movies to feel things, we go to movies to think, and we go to movies to be awed by what we see. But at the end of the day, I think we go to movies to experience something in the presence of strangers in the dark, whether it's laughter or warm feeling, and ideally, frankly, I personally like it to be both. That this movie was going to be in the service of that, of a big-hearted populism, and that it was going to live or die on the basis of that. And, you know, whether it works for everyone or not, who knows, but certainly, as I've said before, it's very much the piece of film that I set out to make. And I'll just be quiet now because I think that Danny Elfman brings it home so beautifully with the end of this movie and his score. This image, this silhouette of the three of them from behind, I drew on a little blackboard in my office 8 months before we started shooting this movie. I knew that it would end with that tableau from behind silhouette of our Trinity of Redemption, as I called it, boy, father, machine. So as Timbaland's song takes us through the end credits, I'm realizing I failed to mention Mary McLaglen, who coincidentally is the sister of Josh McLaglen, my AD and executive producer. Mary was our line producer, and another incredible asset. And the truth is, I feel really, really kind of undeservedly lucky to have had as good a team as exists in the movie business to pull off a movie that was, you know, on the one hand, super complex, super technical and complicated, but with a team that never lost sight of the forest for the trees. Because the trees were complicated, you know, kind of technical aspects, but the forest was always this big-hearted movie. And, you know, and I feel like everyone and all of us worked in the service of that. So hopefully this hasn't been too boring. Hopefully the second screen stuff added a little flavor to what I've shared with you today, and I'll talk to you on the next one. So I tell that story about the last shot and about how I had drawn it crudely and horribly on my office wall a year before we ever shot it, because it's really, in a way, a kind of microcosm of the movie itself, which remarkably stayed pretty true to the vision that I had in my head and that I had in my heart when I first got involved 2 years ago. There are a few pretty cool exclusive featurettes you can watch through your second screen, and I definitely encourage you to do that. And I think that's it for now, and I'll see you on the next commentary on the next movie.